The Washington Post editorial board said, if Biden was too frail for his job, voters should have been informed. Transparency is essential for democratic processes to operate as intended. I'm going to do something that's going to stun you. I'm going to defend Democrats. Once Biden was elected, the idea that someone was going to go public and say, hey, the president of the United States has Jell-O for brains was virtually zero. The individuals who worked so hard to get Biden elected are not going to give up the power they got by saying the president doesn't have the mental or physical capacity to be president. You know who should, though, cover this? The Washington Post. They wrote democracy dies in darkness at the top of the newspaper, and then they stayed in the darkness for 4 years with Biden. When Trump got into office, the Washington Post covered him with a fine-tooth comb. They wrote democracy dies in darkness at the top of the newspaper. They have hundreds of employees in the Washington Post that are specifically targeted with covering the White House and the entire American political universe. And all of them stayed in the darkness. Literally, their tagline is, democracy dies in darkness. And they spent 4 years of Joe Biden's tenure in the darkness. And then they have the audacity, the editorial board does, to publish an editorial saying, if Biden was too frail for his job, voters should have been informed. How about you should have informed them? Your entire reason for existence, democracy dies in darkness, is to ensure that voters do not remain in darkness. None of you could tell us what somehow I told my audience for years, Biden doesn't have the mental or physical capacity to be president. And then when everybody suddenly realizes it, the editorial board sits down and says, boy, somebody really should have told everybody that Biden couldn't do the job. That's your job. You can't blame anybody else. One would argue the only job you exist to do is tell us what the people in positions of power are actually doing, not what they're telling us they're doing. And you failed.